Welcome everybody to the Captain Spot. I am your host Justin Freeman, 6 foot 1 inches, 276 pounds of fantasy knowledge. We have got a very special slate for you tonight, Sunday night football edition of the Captain Spot between the Los Angeles Rams and the Dallas Cowboys in the city of LA. 51.5 point total, 2.5 point road favorites are the Cowboys. And we're going to go over every single relevant play on this slate. But before we do, a quick reminder to go over to captainspot.com, that's cptspot.com, and pick up a copy of my ebook. It's hot off the presses, guys. $34.99, everything you could ever hope to know about playing Showdown DFS. That's captainspot.com, cptspot.com. So that's enough of a sales pitch. Let's talk about Rams Cowboys. Very, very important for us to know every single player on the game. You know, it sounds really simple, but not everybody considers it to the level of detail that we want to. Every time a player misses or, even if somebody farther down on the depth chart is not active in this game, it gradually impacts how we feel about everybody else. So understanding the injury report, understanding who's expected to play, makes a difference in the way that we are going to project this game to go. Obviously, we have Cooper Kupp and Darrell Henderson as the two Rams that we were concerned about this week. Cooper Kupp looks good to go. Even Darrell Henderson is listed as questionable currently as of the time of recording here. Looks good to go for the Sunday Night Football affair. On the other side of the ball, we have Amari Cooper, who had sort of a midweek injury regarding his hamstring. Is reportedly fine and is going to play. But all of these guys popping up on injury reports, we should temper expectations at least a little bit as we're considering how this game could unfold. Obviously, we're talking about a game here with a high total, 51.5 points. That's the second highest one on this entire week's slate, just behind Chiefs-Texans on the Thursday night game, for a matter of fact. And so let's get into thoughts about how that game could unfold. Let's hop into the salaries here, and let's talk about these Dallas Cowboys. Let's start with looking at the quarterback position. Obviously, Dak Prescott is the guy who is going to be under center for the Cowboys. He carries with him a $10,800 price tag. Two running backs there in Dallas, Ezekiel Elliott and Tony Pollard. We'll have to scroll quite a ways to get down to Tony Pollard, who is down here at the $2,200 threshold. Zeke Elliott up at 10-4. And as we're looking at the way this game could unfold, a team is a road favorite. That's an interesting way for a game to potentially play out because typically we like teams playing at home and typically like teams that are favored. So when we get sort of a meshing the other way where a team is on the road but are favored, it makes for some unique game flow scenarios. But I love Ezekiel Elliott in this game. I think he is the premier play and is certainly my favorite guy to throw in the captain spot this week. At a 10-4 salary, that's a high salary for sure, but in the context of other slates, it's not as high as it could be. So I don't see as many places where I feel like we have to spend money. I think I see Ezekiel Elliott as like the guy that I'm focusing the most of my lineups in around for captain spot builds. So Ezekiel Elliott will cost you, $15,600 in order to get into your captain spot with a 10-4 salary. Just think about the way this game more likely plays out is going to favor Ezekiel Elliott quite a bit. Now, Zeke Elliott is rather game script proof. Like, it doesn't matter if the Cowboys are trailing or leading, he's going to get his. But we especially like him when he's leading. And that Cowboys offensive line is capable of opening huge holes. Even though Aaron Donald is waiting for Zeke on the other side of the football, he only occupies one gap on the field. You could argue too for a player like Donald. But anyway, let's talk about Tony Pollard for just a second. Pollard with that $2,200 price tag is a guy who I think is in consideration. He can even be used in consideration with your Ezekiel Elliott lineups. I don't like him so much with Ezekiel Elliott at captain, but you can consider playing two Cowboys running backs in the same game here. Rico Dowdle, not an option for us here on this particular slate as far as somebody we're interested in. But that price differential, $2,200, is going to allow you to get in some other guys across both teams here in what we expect to be a high-scoring affair. If Pollard can trip and fall into the end zone, catch a couple cheap passes, something like that, a lot like what we're expecting from Darrell Williams in the opener between Kansas City and Houston. Moving on to the receiver position for Dallas, Amari Cooper, a guy who was on the injury report, looks like he's going to give it a go here for Sunday Night Football, coming in with a $9,000 salary. Just behind him is Michael Gallup with $8,000, and CeeDee Lamb sort of rounds out that three-wide trio at $5,800. The next three guys on the list, Malik Turner, Cedric Wilson, Noah Brown, three guys that they have roster spots, but we do not project hardly any volume for any of those three guys behind the three-wide set of Cooper, Gallup, and Lamb. Lamb has a lot of, I guess I should say, a wide range of outcomes. We don't know exactly what his role in the offense is going to be. He's an amazing, amazing prospect out of Oklahoma. Fantastic player, could very, very well carve out a role not only as a number 3, but eventually as a number 1. Like, he is drafted to be the eventual number 1 in this offense, no doubt about it. So I think those are the three guys we're choosing from. Cooper may scare people off a little bit with the fact he has been on the injury report, but Michael Gallup in general has been a relatively fine coin flip alternative from Amari Cooper. Like, Amari Cooper is just a rich man's Michael Gallup. It's Michael Gallup gets his fantasy points when he's out there on the field. I mean, you can look at their fantasy points per game from last year, 16.2 to 16.1. Like, they are really similar in how they produce fantasy points, but for whatever reason, and Amari Cooper has his blow-up games, there's no doubt. But I think, given where I expect the ownership to be, even in lineups where you can fit Cooper, I like the idea of flipping to Gallup and leaving that extra $1,000 on the table. So Gallup, a guy I'm definitely foreseeing myself being a touch higher than the field on. As we move into the tight end position for Dallas, and again, with these three guys, Turner, Wilson, Brown, be sure to keep an eye out for the actives report and inactives report before the game. 90 minutes before game time, go to Twitter, search for Cowboys inactives, and see how many of these guys are listed as inactive. Because if any two of them are listed inactive, the other one becomes suddenly really interesting. As a guy, like, if Malik Turner's the only active of those three at $400, like, all he's got to do is catch a pass to pay off. There's a lot of really unique ways you can build around him. But at tight end, Blake Jarwin, Blake Bell, Dalton Schultz, Sean McKeon. Blake Bell was a recent addition. He was the backup tight end to Travis Kelce in Kansas City last year. Now he'll be the backup to Blake Jarwin in Dallas. And Jarwin obviously has been with the team for a good little while, but has been backing up, last year backing up Jason Witten, and was part of a committee a couple years ago as well. So Jarwin's a fine player. I don't expect any sort of major breakout for him, but he's in an explosive offense, and in the realm of a single game showdown slate, certainly viable at a price tag of $6,200. Think about how that $6,200 price tag fits in with Lamb at $5,800, Gallup at $8K, Amari Cooper at $9K. He can be in consideration, but I don't see him being as integral a part of the offense as the other receivers. What I will say in general is I tend to not want to over-correlate my quarterback. Like, if I'm playing Dak Prescott, I probably don't want, like, Cooper and Gallup in that same lineup. I would prefer to have a mixture of wide receiver and tight end because they seem to not cannibalize each other's places on the field as much. Like, typically, if Cooper is winning, Gallup is not winning as far as scoring fantasy points. But meanwhile, Cooper and Jarwin could both go off in the same game and exceed expectation in the same game. So that's my sort of general preference when I'm thinking about things. I like to keep that a little bit diversified, so it's different areas on the field that we're targeting there. But again, I would expect Sean McKeon to probably be inactive this game. Obviously, anytime we're talking, especially in week 1 where we're not exactly sure how many snaps these like really bottom level guys are going to get, a player like Dalton Schultz, if he's active and is on the field at $200 and catches you a single pass, he may be in the optimal lineup. Same thing for Blake Bell at $600. I would probably just go ahead and X out Dalton Schultz from the player pool, focus my efforts simply on Jarwin and Bell, but I prefer the receiving options more over Jarwin currently. And I think we're going to have to think long and hard about how much balance we want to have and how much unbalanced we want to have in terms of how many players we're getting in this lineup from each team. So to look a little bit further, obviously quarterback, we're good to go there. kicker Zerline in this game. If you think there's a chance that the Cowboys get a lot of yardage but do not convert a lot of that into touchdowns, then a Zerline lineup all of a sudden becomes quite possible. But at 4,200, I think I prefer, in a high-scoring game, getting my production elsewhere. Like, where would you rather spend that money? Could you come up $1,600 more dollars and get to CeeDee Lamb? Because I think I'd like that a little bit better. Just lots of different ways to consider how the slate plays out, and don't forget your defenses. So we won't spend a lot of time in general talking kickers and defenses. Just always be thinking about them as ways to get different with what it is that you're doing there. For the LA side of things, let's sort by salary to begin with, and let's see. We've got Jared Goff here at the top at 9,400. Behind him are his top two receivers, Cooper Kupp and Robert Woods, 8,400 and 7,800 apiece. And then it goes to Tyler Higbee, Cam Akers, and then the rest of the crew there with the backup quarterbacks and all that. So let's go position by position here again. Let's start by talking about the quarterback. Obviously, we need to start with Jared Goff here at $9,400. We tend to like quarterbacks that are, trailing and are projected to have good volume and being a part of a high-scoring offense. And Vegas says that this will be a rather competitive game, a 2.5-point total. I think that would probably indicate that on a neutral field in a non-COVID environment and all that this is probably a game Dallas should win by 4 to 5 points. But here we are. We're in LA. Could Jared Goff keep it close and keep the Rams in it and fire up points? I think that's certainly possible. Jared Goff, not a very attractive name as far as drawing a lot of eyeballs and potential, but getting those guaranteed quarterback points is really a helpful way to lock in some floor in your lineup. But keep in mind, Goff does have a relatively wide range of outcomes. We can kind of sort through his game log here and take a look at his fantasy points. To close out the year last year, a couple outcomes north of 24 points. Hit 27.96 there in week 13. So, and then there the 3 weeks before that, you see the floor: 6.72, 6.22, 6.38. So it gets kind of ugly there, kind of quick there for Goff. But we like a guy who can really establish a ceiling in offense, and this looks like a game that could shoot out. So we should be especially attracted to Goff and his pass catchers. What makes that even more the case is the fact that we don't know who the heck is going to run the ball for the Rams. Cam Akers, Malcolm Brown, and Darrell Henderson. We mentioned that Henderson is not off the injury report entirely, but is currently trending towards playing. And at a price tag of $3,400, he is now all of a sudden interesting. That's pretty low. And of the three running backs here, I think Cam Akers is actually the one I'm least interested in at a $6,800 price tag. I think this is a lot more balanced currently than the way the pricing suggests. So obviously, Darrell Henderson missed a chunk of time in camp. Probably could have competed for like the number one job at running back had he not been hurt, but he is hurt. And so Cam Akers, Malcolm Brown have sort of walked away with a lead there. But how do we think about this in the perspective of this slate? Well, we know Malcolm Brown's a little bit more of a one-dimensional runner. Cam Akers is certainly an explosive dual threat athlete. And Darrell Henderson has the passing game chops, but has not had the time on the field. So there's a lot of different ways that this can pan out. Malcolm Brown is probably the guy I'm least interested in here. He could score the touchdown if you're interested in fading Goff. Doing so by playing Malcolm Brown might be the ticket. But, man, I think overall I'm looking for guys that have that passing game upside in this particular game, which draws me more towards Akers and Henderson. If people are giving up on Henderson, I probably want to be a little bit overexposed. We'll go over some simulation numbers here in a minute, but those were run with the assumption Henderson was out, and Henderson looks like he is trending towards play. Going over the wide receivers here on the slate, Cooper Kupp, Robert Woods, and Josh Reynolds at least appeared like the three wide set a week ago, but now Van Jefferson appears to be encroaching on Josh Reynolds' territory as the number 3 receiver. That's a lot of uncertainty for the third option in this offense. It may be one, especially if you're not playing a lot of lineups, to stay away from. So let's not get caught up in trying to figure out who it is, Josh Reynolds or Van Jefferson. Let's assume that it could be neither of them and focus our attention on Kupp and Woods if we're going this Goff lineup. So I certainly get the attraction there at that price point, but if you're just playing one lineup, these may not be the guys for you to consider. And then I don't think any of the guys beyond Van Jefferson as the number 4 are playable. Simba Webster and Tristan Jackson, they're for LA, not in play. Tyler Higbee and Gerald Everett are obviously the 2 key tight ends. Higbee came on like a ton of bricks to close out the end of 2019, and Gerald Everett just hasn't quite been able to make everything piece together there. He had sort of a limited ceiling there to grow into there for the Rams and never quite put it all together. But overall, Higbee is an option that could get there, but at a $7,200 price tag, I'm really kind of turned off. I would certainly much rather play Robert Woods at $7,800 than play Tyler Higbee at $7,200. So overall, if we're thinking about what Vegas says as the most likely game script here, we're thinking about a game in which the Cowboys walk away with the win. It's a close game. It's a high-scoring game. There's probably plenty of passing volume, a good mixture on the Dallas side between run-pass, probably a touch more pass-heavy on the Ram side if they're going to succeed and keep up and hold serve there with the Cowboys. So the way I think I'd prefer to build is around the Cowboys' running game and the passing game from the other side, from the Ram side. So let me show you just sort of what that could potentially look like. This is a piece of analysis I like to run every week, every slate actually, which is a distribution. This right here is a distribution of 5,000 different lineups between how things could unfold here in this game and which players are the most likely captains. And you'll see that Zeke walks away. It's sort of his price point compared to the way the game flow sets up naturally, that there are very few game flows that he's not heavily involved there on the Dallas side. Behind him is Dak Prescott. You can play Prescott in the captain, but that's going to be a bit under leveraged there, I think. Cooper Kupp and Robert Woods then emerge as the next best options, and you can sort of read the list there, and that's going to get you all your captains there as options. And then on the flex side, this graph here once again goes over those same 5,000 simulations. Dak Prescott looking like a great flex option. Same thing with Jared Goff. We talked about Ezekiel Elliott as the optimal captain in this particular game. Then it goes Kupp, Woods, Cooper, Malcolm Brown, Michael Gallup, Cam Akers, Tony Pollard. So we did mention Pollard, and that's the first time we see Pollard as the option there in that lineup. So a lot of different ways that the game can go. Be sure you're considering all the various game scripts, but it's going to be tough to get exposure to every possible thing that can happen. So make a stand, pick a lineup around it. There's a lot of different ways to go. We're going to, being able to properly dissect the running back rotation in Los Angeles, the number 3/4 job there in Los Angeles for wide receivers, and the status of the health around the hamstring of Amari Cooper, I think are going to be three very important things for us to keep an eye on. So that's going to do it for the slate breakdown. Make sure you're heading on over to captainspot.com. That's cptspot.com. Pick up the ebook on your way out of here. Be sure to like us on YouTube. Subscribe to us on your Apple Podcast. Just search the Captain Spot. You'll get it right there. Appreciate everybody here for joining us. We'll be back tomorrow with the Monday Night Football episode, where it's a doubleheader, guys. Be sure to subscribe. Thanks for tuning in.